Hi, assalamu alaikum everybody. I am getting on here today because there is a human rights atrocity that we cannot ignore anymore, and we can't be quiet about it anymore, and we can no longer allow and hope that something else will be done about it. For most of history, I think when human rights atrocities happen, we have a propensity to believe that other people will act, or we kind of turn a blind eye to that. And one thing that I think about so much is that if we were in the position of these people who were fleeing their countries, going through persecution, doing whatever, how much we would ache and pray and hope for that there would be someone on the other side who isn't experiencing this, who would advocate for us and raise awareness for us. Because for a lot of us, not for all of us, but for a lot of us, we live in countries where we can criticize China without having immediate attacks on our livelihood or our lives. So what I'm coming to you guys with today is I've reached out recently to some of my Christian friends, and I have some really, really amazing friends who during Ramadan, even though they're not Muslim, will still fast with me and do things like that. And I know that the month of Lent is coming up, and a lot of people, even not Catholic people, like to give one thing up for the month to focus more on like worship and prayer and things like that. And so what I'm coming to you guys with is a deep and sincere request that whether you're Muslim, Catholic, Christian, whatever it is that you are, that you first of all research what's happening to the Uyghurs in China, research it for your own, and you can see what's going on. But I know that our economies are so deeply tied. I'm coming from a U.S. perspective. Our economy is so deeply tied into China, to Chinese infrastructure, manufacturing. We've become so used to this like made in China phenomena and whatever. And then also a lot of other countries are so deeply intertwined and interwoven with purchasing really cheap goods. And I'm gonna just like rip off an uncomfortable band-aid here. A lot of the reason why goods in China are able to be purchased so cheaply is because they're made in prison labor camps. A lot of the goods that we buy are made in prison labor camps. And I think that so much of the time we tend to become so apathetic when we hear about like the suffering of other people and the cruelness that's going on in the world. But I'm coming to you guys here with a petition, and also most importantly a reminder that when we get together we can accomplish incredible things. We do not need to wait or rely on our countries that we come from, our countries of origin, our friends around us to act before we start to act. Because as we speak right now, there are hundreds of thousands of Uyghur people who are being illegally detained. I want you guys to just like imagine this for a second. If you're a parent, regardless of your religious affiliation, right now in China, families are being torn apart if the women dress modestly, if they show any contact with someone outside in the West, if they pray, if they observe any of our religious teachings or doctrines. It's enough to get you thrown into a re-education camp where, and this is not just like hooey booey things, this is now verified by a number of different human rights organizations. China currently is leading the world in terms of organ sales, and those organs are being harvested. We're not talking about some crazy sci-fi thing. This is happening as we speak, where those organs are being harvested from living Chinese, from living Uyghur Muslims. So their organs are being stolen away from them. Mothers are having their children, the mothers are very much so alive, are having their children taken away from them and sent to orphanages so that they cannot teach them their faith. And the reason why this is happening is it's for a couple of reasons. One, the Uyghurs have been oppressed by China for such a long time, but they sit on a very resource dense part of China where it would be massively profitable if the Uyghurs were just gone, if China no longer had to do it. And they're systemically now murdering and killing Uyghurs. I read a recent report where you can be executed for being Uyghur for almost anything, for genuinely almost anything. There's not the system of legislation in place that we have in our country. And if the people in those places, if the Uyghur people who have not been in prison want to get the body of their relative who's been killed back, they literally have to sometimes pay for the ammunition that was used to murder them. On top of that, imagine just for one fraction of a second, regardless of your religious affiliation, regardless of anything else, imagine you being alive and your child being forced out of your arms, sometimes as young as 1 or 2 years old, even babies. There's a whole other thing we can talk about too, where if you if you are behind the pro-life movement at all, I desperately urge you to get behind this, because in China right now, in the hospitals there, if a Uyghur woman gives birth, there are so many reports being leaked out of there that their babies are being injected with chemicals that immediately kill them. So I believe that this is an issue that, regardless of political affiliations, regardless of where it is you stand on a lot of other things in the world, that you can get behind this. And I also think too, like, God, we can be so apathetic. We can be so apathetic to the suffering of people around us, because and part of that, I think, is it's a survival skill, because we feel like, okay, all this grief and suffering and unimaginable, like, human rights atrocities where they're being brutally tortured, like the organs are being harvested from people who are still living. Like, what's going on? And the whole world knows about it. But we tend to be apathetic because we think, well, what really can we do? And I'm here right now to tell you we can do so much. When people get together, when we act, when we put our feet down, stuff gets done. The entirety of human history is littered with people who have changed the trajectory of everything because they acted. Now, at the same time, I understand I'm a single mom. I have a very, very limited income, very, very small budget. And so a lot of times buying goods that are made in China is the most affordable. So in order to make this boycott something that is easily accessible, or at least doable to everyone, I am asking and begging and pleading with you guys to, first of all, sign the petition. Second of all, please research what's going on to the Uyghurs in China. We are dealing right now with what I would consider to be a second type of Holocaust. And just like with the Holocaust, the world is silent. Right now in China, there are young Uyghur girls, I have no doubt, who are being hidden away the same way Anne Frank is. And some of them will hear their stories one day, and some of them we literally never will never hear that. So I'm asking people for the month of Lent, regardless if you're Muslim, Catholic, Jewish, Christian, Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, whatever it is, that you would please get behind the boycott. So I'm asking people for 1 month, please do not purchase goods that are made in China. Please make conscious decisions to not purchase goods in China. And after this month, inshallah, we can see what our next steps are, but we cannot sit idly by. Maybe we can't go to China. Maybe we don't have the ability to go and form giant protests right now, but I know that every single person watching this video for 1 month can stop buying goods from China. They can research China. You know, I became, like I said, I took my Shahada and I became Muslim in Ningxia, which is another Muslim majority province, but it's a Hui province. And the people who I knew there, who I had on my, not my WhatsApp, what's it called, my WeChat, which is like Chinese WhatsApp, have gone silent. I don't know if they're alive or they're dead. These are people who I prayed with. These are people who held hands with me. These are people who taught me tenets of my faith, who volunteered in orphanages with me. The people that I personally know, I don't know if they're alive or dead. I don't know if their organs are walking around in another country right now. Right now, the world leaders have taken a cowardly stance on the Uyghurs. A lot of Muslim majorities have taken cowardly stances on the Uyghurs in China. We will not do that. We will not do that, and we will not allow cheap goods, and we will not allow cheap goods to stand in the way of a human life. What I'm asking you guys to do for 1 month, and I know that we can do this, inshallah, we can do this. For 1 month. Because, and what we'll be doing, inshallah, is sending a message that as much as we love cheap goods, as much as we love the things that come from us on Amazon Prime, it is not worth the life of another human being. On top of what's going on with the Uyghurs in China right now, China has been taking atrocious measures against students in Hong Kong who are asking for the very most basic tenets of democracy and self-governance. And the thing that blew me away when I was researching this and learning about this is that the Hong Kong students know that they are more or less dead. They are not doing this out of optimism that what is going on in China will stop, but they are doing this so that the world is forced to have an uncomfortable conversation where they're saying children, 18 and 19-year-olds, are being brutally murdered in Hong Kong for asking for basic tenets of democracy. We cannot let these lives be snuffed out. We can't stand idly by. So please, at least for 1 month, do not buy goods from China. On top of that, please sign the boycott. Please join the petition. Please research what's going on to the Uyghurs. Please research what's going on in Hong Kong. Please act. Please act. There are babies who are being murdered. There are mothers who will never see their children again. They are going to be lost in an orphan system. There are students in Hong Kong right now who know who know that they're going to die, and there are students who have already died. And one small thing we can do is to stop buying items from China for 1 month. There's this thing from Lord of the Rings, and I know this is the cheesiest thing, but I hold on to this all the times when things are like the darkest and the most bleak, and I forget who was talking to who, so nobody who's like a Lord of the Rings fan scream at me in the comments, but someone said, you know, we're going against so much insurmountable evil. How, like, what are we supposed to do? And someone responded to that person and said, as long as there is some good left, it's worth fighting for. And friends and brothers and sisters, regardless of whether you stand with the Hong Kong students or the Uyghurs, or you just care about human rights, there is so much good left fighting for. So please, please join this fight. Assalamu alaikum and jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.